Today on Go Island, we're slowing down for a moment to enjoy the beautiful collection of rhododendrons here at Milner Gardens and Woodland in Qualicum Beach. On today's show, a supernatural hero in Ladysmith, labyrinths at Nanaimo's Fairview School, and miracles happen at BC Children's Hospital. That and more in the next 30 minutes. Zombies and the undead have been growing in popularity. Maybe not quite as much as the rhododendrons here at Milner Gardens and Woodland. And there's a comic book artist in Ladysmith who has created his own new comic book character. Here's Derek Johnstone. Issue number 2 will be out in comic stores on Vancouver Island by the end of June. This is Jeff Ball. He's the executive director here at Milner Gardens and Woodland. A lot of history behind the rhododendrons that you can find here in the gardens.
There are, yeah, there is a really good history.
How did it get started? Why are there so many here?
Well, Veronica Milner, who was the driving force of the garden's creation, she worked a lot with Ted and Mary Gregg, who are these great rhododendron breeders, ran a nursery up in Royston. And they were the driving force. They really helped Veronica to make the selections and decide which rhodos to go where. Right. And yeah, it's their rhododendron collection that when it eventually shut down, they balled and burlapped it and shipped it over, and it created a rhododendron collection in Stanley Park. So this is a sister collection to the Stanley Park.
And we were talking earlier that the two collections haven't actually been compared side by side.
No, we haven't sat down with the lists and looked at just to see which ones are.
Project for the future. Yeah. This one's finished. Now, one of the things about rhododendrons I'm learning is that there's a wide variety as to when they bloom, when they're in peak, and the season is long, from early to mid-March till mid-July.
Yeah, our first ones start blooming in early March, and our last one shuts down about middle of July. So it's a long, slow rise and a slow taper off.
This one's done.
This one's just finished off. This one's beautiful. This is Vasii. It's neat to come about 3 weeks ago. This one's deciduous, which isn't a normal characteristic of a lot of rhodos.
Okay.
But you can see it had a beautiful soft pink flower and just really popped out. But again, it's just on its way out. But then
the bright pink one here, I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
And you were sure that was one of the unidentified ones that's part of the collection?
Well, yeah, so Ted and Mary, when they were working with Veronica, they did a lot of crossbreeding of rhodos and created some wonderful ones, introduced a lot to the trade. But they also planted out a lot in Veronica's garden that they just wanted to see what would happen if they bred, these two together. What would it look like? Right. And so we don't have a name for them. Okay. So that's the pink one back there is one of their hybrids. So, and then we've got this one here, which is just into its full glory, and this is Blue Peter. We've got a couple of them.
Right.
And a beautiful one. Really a stunning show for this guy.
And then in between the two Blue Peters,
we have that's Rhododendron Jock.
And that doesn't even really look like a rhododendron to the uneducated eye, such as myself.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of variety in the different flowers and the different size of leaves and style of leaves. We've got some very large ones, some very small. There's an incredible variety in the rhododendron world.
Okay, and some rare ones from what I understand. And we're going to talk to a horticulturist here at the gardens a bit later on, look at some rare specimens of rhododendrons and look at ones that haven't quite hit their peak of blooming yet. We're throwing things over though to Kelly Robinson in the meantime. She's hanging out with the students at Fairview Elementary School. They're making a labyrinth. Still ahead today on Go Island, living proof that miracles do happen. A look at Lanceville's drinking water and looking ahead to the scene with Jose Araujo. That and more still to come today on Go. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. We're here at Milner Gardens and Woodland in Qualicum Beach, and I can hear all the kids from Shoots with Roots screaming and having a great time in the background. And I'm learning a lot about rhododendrons today as well. This might look like an azalea, but the way you tell is it is more bell-shaped than trumpet-shaped. And I'm not sure if that's very, very clear, but through the magic of television, we're going to make it as clear for you as we possibly can. And then on the inside here, if there are 6 or more stamens, you know that it's a rhodo and not an azalea, because an azalea will only have 5. Who knew? Well, now we do. We'll be back with more on Go Island from Milner Gardens after a short break. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. There is an extensive collection of rhododendrons here at Milner Gardens and Woodlands, and it was all started by a woman named Veronica Milner. And this particular plant is named after her. It's finished blooming now. As we mentioned earlier, the season is very long, March to about July. You can tell I'm not very good at that. I don't know if I did more harm than good. Kim Hammond, I haven't done anything wrong here, have I?
It'll survive. It'll be just fine.
It'll survive.
Yeah.
How extensive is the collection of rhododendrons here?
It's a pretty decent size. We're probably one of the larger collections, public collections on the island. There's about 400 different varieties here, and then multiples throughout the garden of those themselves. So there's probably 3 of this and 2 of that and 4 of another. There's actually 3 Veronica Milners right here, so that's a good example.
Wow. And your favorite is already finished blooming?
Yes, my favorite is finished. I call it Big Mac. It's Rhododendron Maccabeanum. So, and it's the biggest, second biggest bloom and the second biggest leaf. So I call it Big Mac.
Okay.
And it's a very popular one.
And this is what you call a small leaf?
It certainly is one of the smaller rhodos, and it's a good way to sort of judge in your own garden if you want to plant a rhodo. The smaller the leaf, technically the smaller the plant. So if you get a really big leaf, you know it's going to be tree size, which rhodos can get. We've certainly got some tree size rhodos here that are 50 plus years. And then you've got the smaller rhodos, which always have a smaller leaf. They won't get tree size. They might get big over a long period of time, but they'll certainly stay within garden range.
Are they low maintenance?
Once they're established, yes. Okay. I think rhodos do tend to like sort of a woodland setting, a lot of humus-rich soil, fairly acidic. They don't like a lot of calciums or limes. But you think of a woodland, then that's where they'd be most happiest. The roots are very much on the surface, so they tend to stay close to a water surface, so they like to be in shade to some degree. But a lot of rhodos, to bloom well, do like some sun, just not hot afternoon sun. Okay. If you can get a dappled shade or something that only barely covers them over, I call it as if they can see sky. They don't have to be in the shade, but if they can see sky, then they'll get enough light.
Okay. And they're very popular. It's easy to see why. They're so beautiful, so colorful, so big, and they last a long time, and they're easy to care for.
They do. They have a huge range of color, right from white right up to red, so that's the full spectrum. And different shapes as well. Even within the bell shape, there's different forms of bell. There's some with frilled edges. And if you include the azaleas, got trumpet versus the bell as well. Right. And all ranges of color. Some are bicolor, some are solid. You've got the whole gamut for a garden.
You were saying earlier, and I've heard that the rhododendrons belong to the azaleas, but the azaleas don't belong to the rhododendron family. Sounds like some in-laws I know.
It's the other way around.
Other way around, okay.
So they both belong to the Ericaceae family, but azaleas actually fit into the rhododendron family. So that's, okay. They belong, it's like having a truck is a car, but it's really a truck. Are we any clearer?
Clear as mud. Clear as mud. Now I understand that here at Milner you're always looking to add and to change the garden, and you're looking for new rhodos to bring in as if there's more available.
Well, we certainly keep our eyes open. The garden does change. Things happen, trees fall down, take things out, you know, you make a new bed for whatever reason, so things do get added. We are very particular about what we add. We try to find either species or very unusual or rare. But it's, again, it has to fit within the time frame and with the history, and it really is about, does it fit for Milner Gardens? We are a historical garden.
And on the flip side, you have a nursery here. Can people get clippings of the rhodos and take them home? Does it work that way? I don't know.
Yes, it does. We do a lot of propagation. In fact, everything in the nursery we sell is propagated from Milner Gardens, and we do rhodos. That's hard to say.
Do rhodos.
We do rhodos. We aren't always successful because rhodos can be notoriously difficult depending on which one it is. Some of the species are easier because they're true to their form, whereas the hybrids, because they've been crossed back and forth, not always as easy. Okay. So it's always an interesting thing to do. I do as many as we can. I have a fabulous group that come and help me do it. But not always successful, but we certainly do have some great successes.
Worth a try for sure. Thank you. So much knowledge. We're going to talk to Kim again later on this edition of Go Island and look at the one of the rarest rhododendrons that you'll find here at Milner Gardens. Jaden Nakamoto was diagnosed with a degenerative congenital heart defect when he was born, but thanks to the BC Children's Hospital, there's proof that miracles do happen. Here's Dunya Tosi. A World of Smiles telethon is a major fundraiser for the BC Children's Hospital, and you can catch it here on Shaw TV this Sunday, May the 26th from 5 until 11. You are watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4, and we are right in the middle of Drinking Water Awareness Week. We're going to show you now a little bit about how the drinking water system in Landsville works. Here's a video that was actually produced by the RDN. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. We're at Milner Gardens and Woodland looking at one of the rarest rhododendron shrub that's here in the garden. This is it. It almost looks like an arbutus tree.
It's very similar in many ways. It does have the sort of patchy bark, and the bark does peel a little bit, and it's the same reddy brown that we've all known and love in arbutus. But the real sort of focal point on this guy, and one of the reasons it's rare, it's hard to find and it's hard to propagate, which is one of the reasons it's called rare.
Okay.
But when it comes out, the first new growth is almost plum colored, and as the sun hits it and it gets more and more light, it changes to the more normal green color.
And how many of these do you have in the garden? Because I've got mistaken. I thought I saw some similar plants around, but they were different kinds.
These are very early. They probably bloom before the garden's even publicly open, but it does hang around sometimes. It's a brilliant, brilliant dark red.
Okay.
And very early. So it's kind of special because we do have blooms right from January right up to July.
Kim was saying off camera before we started this interview, of all the garden clubs you go to, it's mostly women. Until you get into the rhododendron clubs, and then it's the men that get in there.
They do love to grow their rhodies. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of men in the rhododendron groups, and it seems to be sort of the ultimate plant for them. So I guess they are big, and they're difficult, and they take a bit of special enterprise to keep growing and growing, and I guess they like the challenge.
Sounds like a woman for some reason that's coming into my mind.
We're good at it too.
We're good at it too. Very subtle differences, thousands and thousands of different specimens or varieties within the rhododendron family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's right from the small leaf right up to the large, there's the species, and then they cross the species to get a different one, and then they cross that again with something else, and now it's a hybrid, and there's three-way hybrids, and it just goes on and on and on.
And it's not going to stop.
No, it's too popular a passion for a lot of people, a lot of men. So it's going to keep going.
Okay. I wonder if Jose Araujo has a passion for rhododendrons. I know he probably likes strong women. I think he does. Here's Jose with a look at what's coming up on the scene. That brings us to the end of this edition of Go Island. I've never been one for color coordinating, but on days like today when we're hanging out at Milner Gardens, it's pretty sweet to be color coordinated with a rhododendron. What variety this is, I have no idea, because there are more than 400 here at Milner Gardens. You can check them out, come visit it for yourself if you haven't already. If you have, maybe it's time to do so again. You can get all the details through their website. Thanks for watching this edition of Go Island. We'll see you next time. Take some time, stop, smell the flowers. Some of them have smell. Not this one.